Have you ever noticed how silence can speak louder than words? How the energy between two people can shift without a single explanation? One day, she felt your presence, chasing, craving, waiting, and the next there's calm, not anger, not bitterness, just distance. That's when she starts to feel something she never expected, the loss of your emotional attention. At first, she doesn't understand it. She feels the difference but can't explain it. You're still polite, still composed, but the urgency in your tone is gone. The way you used to hang on her replies, the eagerness in your words, the weight of your need for her approval, it's all disappeared. And that's when she begins to question everything, because for the first time she feels what you once felt, uncertainty. Women are deeply intuitive. They can sense when a man's energy begins to withdraw long before it's visible on the surface. She feels it in your silence, in your patience, in the way you no longer rush to prove yourself. That calmness unsettles her. She can't name it, but she can feel that the power dynamic has changed. What once gave her validation now feels like emptiness. The attention that used to inflate her ego is suddenly gone, and in its absence she feels small. This isn't revenge, it's growth. It's the quiet transformation that happens when you stop pouring your worth into someone who doesn't value it. You didn't pull away to punish her. You simply outgrew the need to be seen through her eyes. That's what real power looks like. It's not in control. It's in detachment. It's in knowing that your peace matters more than her attention ever did. And this is the moment she never prepared for, because she was used to being the center of your focus, the anchor of your emotions, the mirror that reflected your worth back to you. But now that mirror has shattered. You're not waiting for her to notice you. You're not reacting to her moods or trying to decode her silence. You've learned the value of your own. That silence is heavy. It's not the silence of indifference. It's the silence of strength. She can feel it. It confuses her. It forces her to look inward, to question what changed. And deep down, she knows the energy that once belonged to her has been reclaimed. You're no longer giving her the power to define your emotional weather. You've taken it back. And here's the beauty in that. The moment you stop chasing validation from others, they start to chase it from you. When you move with peace instead of desperation, people notice. When your presence no longer begs to be acknowledged, it demands to be respected. That's why your detachment shakes her. It exposes how much control she once held over your emotions and how completely she's lost it now. Stay with that strength, because what comes next is transformation, not hers, but yours. This is where you begin to understand the difference between love and attachment, between needing someone and choosing peace. Once you reach that level of awareness, no rejection can break you, no silence can unsettle you, and no loss can define you. So keep listening. Because as she struggles to understand your new calm, you'll learn something far greater. How powerful you become when your heart no longer depends on someone else's attention to feel alive. He starts to feel it before she admits it. The distance, the unfamiliar silence that used to comfort her now unsettles her. She replays old conversations, searching for clues, for signs, for the exact moment your energy began to fade. It's not obsession, it's confusion, because she can't understand how the man who once poured everything into her suddenly seems immune to her presence. That shift doesn't just bruise her ego, it shakes her sense of control. This is where psychology takes over. When someone loses access to the validation they've grown dependent on, the mind begins to panic. It's called cognitive dissonance, the emotional conflict between what she believes and what she's now facing. She thought she knew your patterns. She thought she could predict your reactions. But now your silence has replaced her certainty. And that for her is chaos. She starts analyzing every small thing, your tone, your timing, your distance, trying to prove to herself that she still matters. But every time you remain calm, every time you respond without emotion, her thoughts spiral deeper. She wonders if she pushed you too far, if she misjudged your worth, if she underestimated your strength. Because the man who once sought her approval no longer looks for it. The one who used to explain himself now speaks less and means more. That shift breaks the old dynamic completely. This confusion becomes her quiet storm. One part of her wants to chase, to test, to regain control. The other part resists, held back by pride. So she stays still, pretending she's unaffected, but her mind doesn't rest. She wonders who you're talking to, if someone else now holds your attention, if your heart has already detached for good. That uncertainty is the same feeling you once carried. the same emotional imbalance that made you question your worth. Now she feels it, and she realizes how heavy it truly is. This is the silent power of emotional discipline, the ability to stay calm while everything around you tries to provoke a reaction. Most people crumble when faced with silence, but you've learned that silence isn't emptiness, it's strength. You no longer speak to prove a point. You no longer argue for clarity. You understand that people reveal their truth not through words, but through their consistency. And when her actions no longer align with your peace, you choose distance instead of drama. That's what self-respect looks like in its purest form. Every time she feels your absence, it reminds her that your presence was never guaranteed. You were not a possession. You were a choice. And when a man who gives deeply finally chooses to hold that energy for himself, it changes everything. She's forced to confront the reality that your attention was a privilege, not a promise. And here's what happens next. Her mind begins to shift from confusion to curiosity. What changed in you? How did you become so calm, so centered, so untouchable? She won't admit it, but she's drawn to it. Because confidence built from detachment carries a gravity that words can't describe. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the quiet power that comes from no longer needing to be chosen to feel valuable. Hold that energy, because once you master the art of staying grounded when someone else's uncertainty tries to shake you, you become unstoppable. She may never say it, but she'll feel it deeply. The version of you she once took lightly now stands in silent strength. And in that realization, she begins to understand the one truth she never expected. You didn't change to hurt her. You changed to heal yourself. Now the confusion begins to turn into action. She doesn't know why she's doing it, but she starts to show up where you might notice. A new post, a sudden compliment, a memory dropped in conversation. It's subtle, calculated, but not random. It's her way of testing if the spark still exists, if she can still draw a reaction from you. This is not love, it's instinct. The human mind craves what it no longer controls. When she feels your attention slipping away, she tries to find ways to pull it back, even if she doesn't understand why. Her ego wants reassurance. Her heart wants stability, but neither knows how to function in your absence. That's why she starts doing what she once judged you for, checking your activity, overthinking your silence, wondering who has your time now. Every image, every message, every moment of calm from you stirs something deeper inside her, not because she misses you as a person, but because she misses the emotional certainty your attention gave her. The moment you stop feeding her validation, you trigger a psychological reversal. She begins to crave what she once rejected. It's the same principle that drives desire in every human connection, the scarcity effect. When something abundant becomes rare, its value multiplies. Your silence now carries more weight than your words ever did. Your absence is felt more powerfully than your presence once was. This is why your restraint matters. Most men fail here. They mistake temporary interest for genuine care and rush to respond, thinking she's finally realizing their worth. But understand this. People don't always come back because they've changed. They often come back because their control didn't work. Her sudden warmth isn't always affection. Sometimes it's ego trying to reclaim balance. She doesn't want to lose you yet, but she doesn't want to surrender either. That's why she pulls you close just enough to feel secure, then distances herself when you lean in. It's a cycle, one that only breaks when you stop playing, and you've stopped. You're no longer chasing clarity from confusion. You're no longer responding to mixed signals. You've learned that your peace is more important than any temporary attention. That's the real transformation. You're not detached because you stopped caring. You're detached because you finally started valuing your energy. This shift unsettles her more than anything else, because she expected you to chase again, to react, to show that she still had that invisible power over you. But instead you remain still. That stillness becomes your greatest weapon. It's not resistance, it's mastery. It's the calm confidence of a man who no longer moves to prove a point. What she feels now is reflection. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing her to see herself without the comfort of your devotion. Every attempt she makes to draw you back only deepens her awareness of how much things have changed. She can't control what she doesn't understand, and your peace is beyond her understanding. That's the paradox of emotional detachment. It makes people confront their own emptiness. The more you stay calm, the louder her mind becomes. The less you react, the more she realizes what she lost wasn't just your attention. It was the version of herself that felt powerful through your presence. So keep standing firm in that peace, because your silence isn't rejection, it's evolution. It's the quiet proof that you've stopped chasing love at the cost of yourself. And that, more than anything, is what truly confuses her. Indifference is what breaks her, not anger. Not distance, indifference. Because anger still means emotion. Distance can still mean care. But indifference, true, grounded, unshakable indifference, means peace. It means you've stepped beyond the reach of her influence. It means her actions, her words, her silence no longer dictate the rhythm of your emotions. And that realization cuts deeper than anything else ever could. At first, she mistakes it for pretense. She tells herself you're playing a game, that you're trying to make her chase, that you're pretending not to care. But the calm in your energy exposes the truth. It's not an act. You genuinely don't need her anymore. You've disconnected your self-worth from her validation. That's the moment your power becomes undeniable. Indifference is misunderstood. People think it's coldness, but it's not. It's mastery of emotion. It's choosing not to be moved by what no longer serves your growth. It's understanding that peace isn't found in control. It's found in letting go of everything that disturbs your balance. When she feels that from you, when she sees that no amount of pressure can pull you back into her chaos, it shifts something in her deeply. Because now she's facing a version of you that no longer exists for her approval. The man who used to explain himself now speaks with silence. The one who once argued for understanding now values his inner calm too much to engage. That evolution terrifies her, because she realizes she no longer has emotional power over you, and power is what she was used to having. Your indifference teaches her something she never expected to learn from you, emotional accountability. She starts to see how her actions contributed to your distance, how her inconsistency, her ego, her games, all the things she thought you'd always tolerate became the reason you detached. The silence you give her becomes a mirror that reflects her own immaturity back at her. And though she may never admit it, that awareness begins to eat at her. This is the hidden power of emotional evolution. It doesn't scream, it doesn't prove, it doesn't chase. It simply is. When you reach that level of detachment, your energy carries a quiet dominance. It commands respect because it no longer seeks it. It shifts dynamics not through confrontation but through composure. You stop reacting and suddenly everyone else has to adjust. Her mind begins to replay what she lost. But it's not just your presence she misses. It's the emotional safety that came with your attention. The peace she once felt knowing you'd always be there has turned into a silence that makes her question her own worth. That's what indifference does. It forces people to confront the emptiness they used to hide behind your affection. And this is where your growth becomes irreversible. Because once you taste that level of freedom, the ability to remain centered while others lose balance, you never go back. You realize you don't need to be understood to stay at peace. You don't need closure to move forward. You don't need validation to feel valuable. You've built an inner stability that no one can manipulate again, so you stand firm, calm, untouched. Because real strength isn't about showing power. It's about being unmoved when others try to take it from you. And when she finally sees that her influence no longer bends your emotions, she understands what she's truly lost, not the man she used to know, but the emotional access she'll never have again. Eventually, the weight of your absence begins to sink in, not because she suddenly understands you, but because she finally feels what it's like to be unseen. The silence she once dismissed as indifference now echoes like consequence. She feels it in moments she can't distract herself from, in quiet hours where her thoughts grow too loud to ignore. The same man she once thought she could always return to no longer waits where she left him. That realization doesn't just sting, it unravels her sense of control completely. Her mind begins to spiral. She wonders if you've moved on, if someone else has found comfort in the peace she once took for granted. She wonders if the version of you that loved her still exists somewhere beneath that calm exterior. But no matter how much she tries to convince herself that she doesn't care, the truth is undeniable. She does. Because people only realize the depth of your value when they lose the privilege of your presence. That's the power of walking away with dignity. When you remove your energy from someone who misused it, the absence speaks louder than any explanation could. It forces reflection. It forces accountability. It makes them confront the reality they tried to ignore, that your attention was never guaranteed and your patience had limits. She begins to remember every moment you showed up, every time you tried to understand her, every time you chose compassion when she offered pride. And the memory of your consistency becomes her punishment. This is not about revenge. It's about balance being restored. You didn't set out to make her regret losing you. You simply chose to stop losing yourself trying to keep her. And now the same energy that once gave her comfort is teaching her the meaning of consequence. That's the natural rhythm of emotional growth. The moment you detach, people are forced to feel what they made you feel, but you must not return out of sympathy. Her pain is not your responsibility. Her lessons are not yours to carry. You can't heal someone who refuses to see how they broke the bond. Compassion doesn't mean returning to chaos. It means wishing them clarity from a distance. Because if you go back, the cycle repeats. She'll find comfort again in your forgiveness, and the pattern will continue until you forget who you are. You've worked too hard to earn your peace. Don't trade it for familiarity. This is where true emotional power is tested. Can you stay strong when your empathy tempts you to go back? Can you hold your boundary even when her sadness calls out for your comfort? This is where you prove to yourself that your growth wasn't just an act of strength. It's become your new standard. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care more about your healing than about being understood. And while she struggles with her own reflection, you're learning something far greater. You're discovering that peace feels better than attention, that clarity is more powerful than closure, that walking away without resentment gives you more freedom than winning any argument ever could. Her emotional collapse is not your victory, it's her awakening. And your silence isn't cruelty, it's a lesson wrapped in grace, because when you finally stop chasing what drains you, you make space for what's meant for you. You rise, not out of pride, but out of purpose. And that rise is something she can't ignore. It's the quiet reminder that the man she lost isn't coming back, because the man you've become would never stay where he wasn't valued. As she breaks beneath the weight of her own reflection, something inside you begins to rise. The silence that once felt like emptiness now feels like expansion. You start to realize that peace isn't the absence of noise, it's the presence of clarity. The energy you used to pour into fixing someone else now flows into building yourself. Every moment of stillness becomes a space for strength. Every unanswered message becomes a reminder of boundaries, and every ounce of restraint becomes a declaration that your worth no longer depends on who chooses to recognize it. This is where your power transforms. You're no longer reacting to life, you're directing it. The version of you that once begged for understanding now walks in self-assurance. You don't need anyone to validate your feelings because you've learned to trust them. You don't need anyone to see your value because you embody it. That's what growth does. It teaches you that attention isn't affection, that desire isn't devotion, and that not everyone who wants you deserves to have you. She starts to notice this transformation too. She sees the calm in your demeanor, the focus in your words, the confidence in your silence. It's not arrogance. It's awareness. You're no longer living from emptiness, you're living from fulfillment. And that unsettles her in a way she can't articulate. Because while she's still trying to process the loss, you've already turned that loss into power. You've redirected your pain into purpose, and that purpose shines through in everything you do. This shift isn't about revenge. It's about evolution. You've stopped fighting for closure because you understand that closure doesn't come from others, it comes from acceptance. You've stopped replaying what could have been because you finally see what needed to end. Every ounce of energy you once gave away has been reclaimed. You've learned that love without respect isn't love, it's attachment. And peace without boundaries isn't peace, it's submission. That realization changes the entire way you move. You no longer chase validation, you attract alignment. You no longer fear rejection, you recognize redirection. Every moment of detachment has built you into someone who leads with self-respect, not desperation. That's why your energy feels different now. It's grounded, stable, free from the chaos that used to define you. She can sense it, and it leaves her with a question she can't answer. How did the man who once needed her approval become the one she quietly admires from a distance? The truth is simple. You chose yourself. You stopped waiting for someone else to value what you were always capable of giving yourself. Consistency, discipline, compassion, and purpose. The man she once doubted has become the man she can't forget, not because you did anything to prove her wrong, but because you proved yourself right. That's what self-growth does. It doesn't chase recognition, it commands it. Now, your silence no longer speaks of pain. It speaks of power. Your peace no longer feels lonely, it feels earned. You've become what every person eventually respects, someone who outgrew the need to be chosen and instead chose his own evolution. That kind of transformation doesn't just heal, it inspires. It shows that when you stop giving your energy to people who misuse it, life starts giving it back to you in the form of strength, success, and inner freedom. And as she watches you rise, not with pride, but with purpose, she begins to understand what she lost. Not the attention, not the effort, but the kind of man who could have led her to growth if she had valued him sooner. But you've moved on from needing to be understood. Because now you're too focused on becoming everything you were meant to be when you finally stopped chasing what wasn't meant to stay. Freedom doesn't always come with celebration. Sometimes it comes with silence. The kind that feels strange at first, but eventually becomes sacred. You start to realize that the greatest victory isn't making anyone regret losing you. It's realizing you were never meant to be defined by who couldn't see your worth. The peace you feel now isn't an accident. It's the result of every moment you refused to settle, every time you walked away instead of shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's comfort. That's real power. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't chase, the kind that simply exists, unbothered, unwavering, and whole. She can sense this shift, even from a distance. It's not about what you post, what you say, or what you do. It's about what you no longer need to prove. There's a calmness in your presence now, a quiet confidence that can't be faked. It's the energy of a man who has faced his pain, learned from it, and risen above it. That's what true strength looks like. Not resistance, but release. You no longer fight to be understood, because peace has become more valuable than explanation. And that's when everything changes. When you stop living for how others perceive you, you begin to live in truth. You stop bending your identity to fit someone's temporary emotions. You stop giving loyalty to people who mistake it for weakness. You begin to see that real love, real connection, can never exist where your self-respect must die to sustain it. Detachment isn't about closing your heart. It's about protecting it from being drained by those who never intended to understand its depth. This level of freedom redefines everything. You no longer chase closure because you've accepted that some people will never admit what they lost. You no longer wait for apologies because you've made peace with not needing them. You understand that forgiveness isn't about giving others peace. It's about releasing yourself from the weight of resentment. That's how you win. Not by proving a point, but by reclaiming your power. She'll feel this evolution in ways words can't describe. Because what once belonged to her attention now belongs to your purpose. What once fueled her pride now fuels your growth. The man she once doubted has become a force she can't ignore, not because you sought revenge, but because you chose transformation. You stopped chasing love and became it. You stopped seeking validation and started embodying worth. That's what makes you untouchable. Every test, every heartbreak, every silence, it all served a purpose. It pushed you toward this version of yourself that no longer fears being alone. Because you've learned that solitude isn't loneliness, it's alignment. It's where clarity lives. It's where self-respect grows. It's where peace begins to bloom quietly without needing permission or applause. And as you walk forward, something profound happens. You stop looking back, not because you've forgotten, but because you've forgiven. You've made peace with the past, not by rewriting it, but by understanding it. Every experience shaped you, every heartbreak refined you, every ending taught you that nothing real can ever be lost, only return to where it truly belongs. This is the freedom that can't be taken from you, the freedom of knowing your emotions are your own, the freedom of walking away without hate, the freedom of loving without losing yourself. That's where true power begins, not when you control others, but when nothing outside of you can control your peace. Because once you reach that level of emotional independence, you stop chasing closure, you start living it. When you reach this point of clarity, something unshakable begins to form within you. It's not arrogance, it's not indifference. It's alignment, the realization that your value never depended on who saw it. You begin to understand that peace is not something others can give or take away. It's a decision you make daily. The decision to protect your energy, the decision to walk away from chaos, the decision to stop begging for what should flow naturally. That's when you finally understand that your time, your focus, your love, they are sacred currencies and not everyone deserves access to them. The man who learns detachment is not heartless, he's healed. Because emotional control isn't about suppression, it's about direction. It's the difference between reacting to pain and responding with purpose. When you stop letting external validation dictate your inner peace, you reclaim your sense of control. You no longer chase what leaves, because you've learned that what stays effortlessly is what's meant for you. This is the mindset of a man who has transformed suffering into strength, rejection into redirection, and silence into self-mastery. She feels that deeply, because when you were desperate for her attention, she held the power. But now that you've reclaimed it, the energy has shifted. What once made you anxious now makes you calm. What once made you chase now makes you reflect. There's nothing more magnetic than a man who no longer needs to be chosen to feel complete. That confidence, that calmness, that quiet certainty, it speaks louder than any argument, louder than any apology. It's the unspoken language of power. And here's the truth. People sense when you've detached from needing their approval. It unsettles them because it reveals the illusion of control they once had. The more you value yourself, the more others are forced to reevaluate how they treated you. But by then, you've already outgrown the version of yourself that needed their recognition. You've already stepped into something deeper. Self-respect that doesn't bend, confidence that doesn't perform, peace that doesn't need an audience. This is where growth becomes irreversible. You stop replaying the past because it no longer defines you. You stop trying to prove your worth because it's already proven by the fact that you chose yourself. The world changes when your focus shifts inward, when your purpose becomes bigger than your pain. You start to move differently, speak differently, think differently. You carry yourself with a quiet power that doesn't need validation because real confidence doesn't announce itself. It radiates. What she's witnessing now isn't the loss of your interest, it's the birth of your evolution. She's not losing a man who stopped caring. She's witnessing a man who started caring about himself. And that change, that self-respect, that emotional discipline, creates a gravity that words can't describe. Because the truth is, when you stop being emotionally available to what drains you, you become available to what builds you. You make room for purpose, for peace, for people who see your worth without needing to be reminded of it. That's the shift. When your energy no longer begs to be seen, it begins to attract what's aligned. When your heart no longer aches for validation, it begins to beat in rhythm with freedom. You no longer need to prove that you've moved on. Your peace proves it for you. And in that silence, in that stillness, you become everything you once chased. The calm after the storm, the strength after the fall. The man who finally remembered who he was before he forgot himself trying to be enough for someone else.